You're listening to Resilience Radio. I'm Irvin Eisenberg, host of the show, and I'm on with Uncle Tommy, the title that you often prefer. For those of you watching, you can see Tommy here, and for those of you listening, you'll hear from him a little bit. As always, the opinions on this show are not necessarily mine. I like to feature a wide variety of perspectives, and everyone's got a different body and medical history and needs, so not everything is going to resonate with you. Additionally, none of this is meant to be medically diagnostic or prescriptive in any way. So I'm really pleased to have Tommy on talking about martial arts, health, Qigong, and I'm sure all sorts of other great things.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I know you in the context of martial arts mostly, but I know you do Kung Fu and Qigong and Tai Chi, and you were just sharing right before we started here on the your personal health journey. Let's continue from that health journey. You had this diagnosis of juvenile diabetes, now type 1 diabetes. So it seems like you've been drawn to Eastern medicine, both as movement practice and the herbs and nutritional advice. I'm curious, do you see any relationship between that? You mentioned earlier on that you're half native. How has that affected your health journey beyond certain genetic predispositions? Does that have any connection to looking east, because a lot of the indigenous medicines were sort of destroyed here as far as knowledge?
So, what a great question. Spiritually, yes, because my aunts had always looked at it as that you need to, like, one with nature and it being in harmony was just a natural thing. But there was always that look to what's in nature, look what's around you, look what's growing up around you. It kept people alive for tens of thousands of years or longer, for as long as the memory can serve us from from generation to generation. Why throw all that out now? Now, they also obviously would take an aspirin if they had a headache. It wasn't like completely, um, just Native American wise, but a lot of my aunts were, uh, culturally, for example, a lot of cultures will eat, for example, potatoes at every meal or rice at every meal. We had squash, so there wasn't a lot of that heavy starchy carbs necessary all the time, and I think that kind of helped as well. But when looking at the different different herbal teas and stuff like that, I found myself drawn to that. Now, it made it interesting how, like, I had no problem learning how to pick up what was poisonous and what was not in my own backyard. And that's from being my aunt. That was growing up, in that area. So dandelion root, all that kind of, what trees were good, cherry bark trees and stuff. And then the birch beer, that we would take the root out. They made it a warm drink beverage. So how do I feel better knowing, what do I do today to feel better tomorrow? Yesterday already happened. So let's move on. Well, it was. And I know that what I eat today and what I drink today, how I look at things, how I practice today, how I move today will definitely help me tomorrow or even an hour from now. Instead of trying to go. Now, not that I throw the past away, especially when it comes back to reflection where I made mistakes. And there were a lot of them, but you learn from that. And that's growth, right?
Yeah, I think I follow that. So I imagine your practice right now as a teacher,
Mhm.
and I imagine that encompasses more than just your martial arts classes. What does that look like? You're both you've got some degree of massage. You do some Aikido and Tai Chi and the Kung Fu. I'm sure there's pieces I'm missing here. Paint the
Right, so
picture for me.
I do a weapons class as well, a Kali, and so there's a plethora of martial arts that I teach. But I also teach, reason why a lot of black belts come to my classes is that the approach I take is, for example, I turn your fear, whatever you're afraid of, into curiosity. So philosophically, if you're afraid of something, whatever it is, get curious about it. And then explore, well, why was I afraid? What do I have to do where I'm not afraid? Whether it's stepping forward, stepping back, changing, you're going from left to right. And when it comes to like somebody who's like, say you're afraid of the dark, ask yourself why. And a lot of times when you walk outside, you ever have your hair stand on the back of your head? And you don't know why?
Hmm.
So you go inside, you get a flashlight, and you realize, well, there was a hole in front of you, and your body sensed it. Or there's a skunk
Mm.
around the corner, or there's a bear about 50 yards over to the right. All right, well, you had a good reason to be nervous at that moment in time. But now that you got curious about it, now you can recognize, well, I'll wait till the bear to go by. I'm going to walk around the hole. You're not afraid anymore. And so
Mm.
no matter what it is in life, if you look at it from that point of view, you can accomplish a lot more. I also go on the idea of, just because you have an emotion doesn't mean it's a good one, and doesn't mean you need to act on it, right? So you can, that will save you a lot of heartache. That could save a lot of ways as well. So it's martially, that all makes sense too, because a fight or flight, there's more responses than that. There's the whole gray area in between, and many times that's kind of where you want to be. I like the saying, I'll walk a mile out of my way to avoid a fight, but once I'm in it, I'm not backing down an inch.
Mm.
I did the same way with my health. I'm, okay, this is what I got right here. I'm not going to back down. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be able to talk about it tomorrow. And I can get this back to martial arts. My kung fu teacher, when I started getting pretty good, made me learn another art, non-martial. I chose watercolors, but he
Mhm.
recommends, for example, you do watercolors, calligraphy, gardening. Kung fu translates to a good hard work. It doesn't mean just martial arts. You could be a chef and have good kung fu. So what he was trying to do was get you to be more balanced on your approaches and things. So, poetry, calligraphy, painting, something different in your life that gives that, even if you're not even good at it, eventually, if you practice it, it will bring you joy. Like when people first started painting, they're not necessarily happy doing it, but if they do it for a while and they get pretty good at it, now you start seeing, this some pride, some gladness in their art. People that do stained glass, their first few projects, they won't even show you. But after they've been doing it for a while and you see that lamp sitting there and they say, "Yeah, I made that." You can see what that brings into their life. Make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
So, what I'm curious, you've probably helped a lot of people in their teens over the
Mhm.
years. If you were to go visit Tommy from a year or just after your diagnosis, what would you do to help you? Mm. So, a lot of instructors have titles, and every martial art's got its own titles or interpretations of those titles. The only title I've heard you use is uncle. Could you speak to that?
Okay, so and I didn't give myself that title. So what it is that I have multiple black belts. You can probably see a bunch of them hanging behind me. Um, and I'm proud of them, and I did earn them. Uh, but I can go by Sifu in Kung Fu. I can go by Sensei. I technically I'm a grandmaster because I have my own school and with a combined system. I've been, credentially, I have a master. I'm in multiple Hall of Fames. I mean, it's all there, but I don't care for the term personally for master. To me, that's either a heavenly term or it just doesn't sit right with me. I understand why people use it, and I get it, and I have no problem, you know.
He has lots of people who he treats like family, so he throws around that word, but he means it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's something distancing about the term sensei, even though it means the one who came before a teacher and such. But it's definitely there is even though there is the implication that there's a teacher and there's a student, there isn't the terminology doesn't have such a clear connection to it. Whereas uncle implies that I must be a nephew, right? Like that's
Absolutely right.
so it has a two-way title that's yeah, identifying connection instead of identifying authority, so to speak, while still being respectful.
It does, and it shows favor. Like, I like this person, right? So it shows that kind of thing too. And now sensei is probably hard to translate from one culture to another. Sifu's a little easier because, that can mean that's an endearing term in Mandarin, right? So, but it still means teacher or learned one, and all that kind of thing. Um, but again, that those terms are not used just in martial arts in their native languages. You could be a sensei gardener, right? You can be, a seafood poet. Um, so there's other, and then then it changes too within the culture itself, where um, there's no standoff with uncle. There's no,
Mhm,
and then when people call me uncle, even if I've never laid eyes on them before, I immediately know that somebody pointing them in my direction. So I need to grab their hand.
mhm.
I need to show that, okay, hey, so, all right, you're calling me uncle. How can I help?
Yeah.
What's up? Just the bathroom's over there, down to the right. You'll see it. If it's that simple, but they just needed directions, it shows that for that moment in time, I can help them. So I'm going to, you know, whatever it is. So yeah.
So so your current practice, you haven't you've done a lot of things, and I feel like you haven't a lot of times I have guests on, and they sort of jump right into self-promotion to some degree. And
Oh, geez.
as an uncle, you're not
Yeah.
tending to do that. But I want to give you the
No.
opportunity to if people are listening to this and like, okay, this guy Tommy sounds cool. How do I get to call him uncle? What does learning from you look like? What you've got a few classes you're teaching. What are your offerings?
So I teach for free, which usually comes up in most podcasts or interviews that I do, because sometimes it's standoffish, sometimes it's out of disbelief. But I always hear often somebody with your credentials, why you teach it for free. And basically, it's because it's my way of giving back. I truly believe that the lifestyle the martial arts introduced me into is why I'm alive today. And you, I don't want to say impossible, but it's strongly rooted in me, and people who know me, is why I could do this podcast right now. Um, I you know, I am blessed to be able to walk the earth today and to share. So I teach for free, and that's in Central Vermont on Wednesday nights. I do an all ages class where your whole families come. A lot of single moms come with their kids. There's even a grandpa coming with his granddaughter. It's all ages, and that's on Wednesday nights. And then after that, I do traditional weapons class, and then the third class is a little more mature material-wise. We go over self-defense, we go over real life situations, we go over what ifs, you know, um, what happens if you're walking out of the grocery store and the idiot of a lifetime is in front of you? What do you do? So, I do that every Wednesday night in Central Vermont, in the Randolph area. I'm also available if you find me on social media under Tommy Given. I'd be happy to talk or message me or talk to me. I do a lot of seminars too. Um, a lot of colleagues or friends in the martial arts want me to come to their class and to do whatever. A lot of teachers will say, you know what, that's an Uncle Tommy thing. Let me get them here next Tuesday, and we'll go over that. So, because I actually do a lot of like real life stuff. Part of my background is I protected high profile security for a long, long time. I worked for Coppock and Lynch. They were music promoters, and um, any musical act that you can think of from like the mid '80s to early 2000s, I guarded. So in arena situations, I was side stage. My job was to protect the talent, and then I was also I competed internationally and nationally. For a long time. That's how Jeremy got to know me. I'm available for just call me to come to the school or class, and I usually will do it for a diet soda or something, or an iced tea. I mean, it's not about the money for me. Um, I'm in Elements MMA in Keene at least once a month. I go down to Exeter. at least a few times down there. I'm up in Burlington with, Kelly's Taekwondo school and April's school and all those. So I'm around. I'm not hard to find. And again, any questions that somebody has, or even like, for example, since being a health podcast, you know, what what are some of the things I choose to eat over others? What have I found that, because every diabetic is a little bit different. Um, what does cause your blood sugar to rise or lower too much? Do you do you calorie base anymore? I don't. I carbohydrate count. Um, so I eat a lot of lean foods and stuff. Tons of fruit and vegetables, natural stuff. I stay away from processed food as much as I can. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but it's just what I chose. I drink a ton of water every day. I think that helps a lot. I mean, a ton. So any of those kind of questions as well. I help out with quite a few community organizations like with Capstone and WISE, which is Women in Safe Environments. I volunteer a lot of time in doing those things as well. So people find me in those avenues as well. Younger diabetics, like a young family, their 2-year-old comes down with juvenile diabetes. I would go in and help those family recognize when his sugar is dropping. Again, it's a lot easier now with the CGMs, with the continuous glucose monitors. I mean, those weren't available till recently. And even when they first came out, insurance wouldn't cover it. That's another topic right there. But that's another week-long topic, right? So, oh, good Lord. I'm big pharma. So, not a fan. But anyway, but without it, I'd probably be dead too, right? There's
Mhm.
that juggle that's just hard to deal with. So, and I avoid
And you have a
politics
bit
as
of a
much as I.
massage. Do you have a bit of a massage practice as well? Is that financial, or is that just something you do sometimes for
That's
folks?
something I do, or help out, if friends and that kind of thing. No, I don't do it financially. I'm not licensed, so
Mhm.
nothing like that. But I actually, so, it's more of, I actually got into it. So like when I was judging or refereeing, or I always ask permission. I say, hey, do you mind if I take a look at it? And there's usually somebody around that says, yeah, let Uncle Tommy just kind of handle that for a moment. So
So I'm having the image of the classic Karate Kid moment where he twists his ankle or knee or whatever it was, and there's the clapping, and there's sort of almost a Reiki moment.
yeah, it is a glorified Reiki moment. Reiki, when it comes down to it, what is that? It's about getting balance, right? Finding
Mhm.
balance in whatever that you're going through. And in that moment, he wanted to be healed, not so he can continue to fight, so he can find balance with himself. I mean, and that's such a moment. I know people that literally had to plot out how they're going to get out of bed every day. They start
Mhm.
taking Tai Chi. I recommend like a Reiki person for them. Let's change your diet a little bit. Let's start drinking some more water. And then one day I'll get that text or that phone call. I actually got up and got out of bed, and 10 minutes later I realized. So, but it is a art that is based on, at the ultimate goal is to be able to not harm somebody who's trying to harm you.
Mhm.
All right. In the end, um, it is said that, like, the moves
Mhm.
are very simple, but they're not easy, especially if somebody's running at you with a knife.
And what is your background in Aikido? Where was that training?
So that training started in California, then I continued it out, and then into Connecticut. I reached third degree in that, and then stopped.
Mhm.
So, just to take on something else. Um,
Mhm.
so I've studied multiple arts, as you know. So, um, uh, some of them I reached pretty good rankings, and other ones I just did for a short time. Like I took Taekwondo for 6 months just to learn that offensive sidekick. Because I kept on getting hit with it in a tournament. And I'm like, "Oh, if I wanna keep getting hit with this, I gotta learn how to defend it." So I took
Mhm.
taekwondo lessons for 6 months. The teacher was a really good guy. He's like, "Well, why are you here?" I'm like, "I wanna learn that kick." "Alright." You know, "Come on in." So that's what I for 6 months, I came in, I went in twice a week, took the class, paid the mat time, put a white belt on. Even though I made clear I wasn't, but that's out of respect for him, put the white belt on and I learned that kick and got pretty good at it, you know. Um, so and then, he took advantage of me as well. Like he would have me spar against his black belts and play with them and show them different things and go around and that kind of stuff. Um, but for those 6 months, I was definitely his student, and do whatever he asked. Well, within reason. I mean, so, but yeah, that was, and I bowed in, paid my dues, and learned that kick. And the other ones I took for decades. Been studying for a long, long time, and some I did at one time. I mean, I was taking kung fu and aikido at the same time, or, um, doing tai chi and weapons at the same time. So there was a lot of that as well. And I had to think, I had, the ability to do that. So, but I might have been a little selfish and all that too. I mean, I have been divorced a couple of times, and there's other things I probably neglected that I shouldn't have. That's stuff to think about as well. So that part of the balance wasn't quite on, but I've learned since then. So you look back and reflect.
So, looking forward, what do you want to continue to learn? Are there any new things that you want to try out?
Well, I'm always planning, and I'm always interested in other things in arts. Like, so as far as learning a new art, other than more than a seminar or two, I'm not interested at
Hmm.
that. However, to continue to improve what I'm doing,
Hmm.
continue to improve to be a better teacher, and being a better teacher that may hopefully it'll make me a better human at the same time. Sharing what I have, the passion what I have, how it's helped me. I'm fairly well known in the self-defense circles too, so I'll always continue to help, people with that. I failed miserably in quite a few areas, so that from my mistakes, I've learned quite a bit, how to get caught on this side versus this side. There's 4 levels of martial arts that most people don't understand, and you as a martial artist probably heard some of this, right? You repeat your moves all the time. It becomes repetition, and repetition, right, becomes what? Muscle memory, right? You keep going over the same thing, so it becomes muscle memory. But a lot of people don't realize that after muscle memory, there's more steps. From muscle memory, it becomes instinctive. And then from instinctive, it becomes who you are. And if who you are is that person that cares about life so much that it would do anything to protect it, that's not a bad guy, you know, for protect your life. Like not in a selfish way, but life in general. That's why my dogs are rescued. That there's ways to, you know, be there's kids where I live and they you could tell mom didn't have the money for better clothing. Vermont gets cold. So this
Hmm.
year, and I saw this last year. So this year I went out and I talked to the local thrift store. And as these sizes of coats came in, they put them aside for me. I went and bought them, and I just kinda left them, for the kids across the way. They knew it was me, but mom didn't have to say anything, and the kids got jackets now because they walk to school, you know? It's those little things I think that will make the world better, and not so much on who you voted or didn't vote for, because
Hmm.
that doesn't matter when it comes to the kid across the street. It doesn't matter when it comes to, my friend of mine is having a baby, so we made meals. Here you go. You don't have to cook for another 2 weeks. Put them in the freezer, plop them out. Your husband's going to work. Those are in the microwave. There's those little things you could do as a community that it doesn't matter who the hell's in office or who's not. Doesn't matter. You just be neighborly, help one another out. To me, those are the goals that I live for now. Little reasons to make someone's life smile a hair more. Steve Watson, he says, I didn't take kung fu to be better at kung fu. Kung fu made me a better me.
Thank you so much for coming on and taking your time today. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you.
It was fun.
This is Irvin Eisenberg. You're listening to Resilience Radio. If you like this episode, subscribe to the channel. The music was brought to you by Aaron Marcus with their tune Some Biological Process. You can check the show notes for full credits on that, as well as information about Tommy. Until next time, take care.